Hey, what's up everybody? I am really ready to dive into something that should be fun and simple because I've been getting my ass kicked all day by a couple mesas, and every other tech I know shares that pain. I don't want to get off on a tangent about why mesa boogies suck to work on, but let's do something that's easy to work on and not very problematic, which is the Marshall JCM800. This one in particular is made in 1984, and this is a transitional year. So sometime in 84, they also went to the horizontal inputs. The reason I say that this one is transitional, if we turn it around and look at the back, it is a vertical input that has the DI jack in the back. 283 did not have the DI jack, and really up until I saw this one, I didn't realize that the 84s had them as well. There's not too much going on with this one. This is a really clean example. It looks great. Nothing's really messed up. The only thing I saw on it was one of the little caps for one of the knobs has been knocked off. We're going to recondition that. I do have spare knobs that are period correct for this. When I took it home and played through it, I do notice, like, when you hit the low notes at super high volume, you kind of hear this little bit of a ghost note thing going on, which means the capacitors are kind of failing. I've seen much older amps that don't have that problem with the original caps, but who knows, you know, they could dry out. It could have been stored and not turned on for years. Who knows? Not a big deal. We're going to change them out anyway because I want this thing to work no matter what. I don't want to have any of those questions up in the air. So without further ado, let's take her apart. So really the only thing we need to change out is these nasty ass green filter caps, and there's two bias caps on the main circuit board as well. Alright, so let's take a look at the inside here. So everything looks good so far. And there's a couple things we can do to improve this without altering the original circuit, because I don't want to have this thing modded or anything like that. You can see that they've only shielded from here to here on this grid input wire, and it's done with what they call a hot shield. They tie the shield to the plate of V2 or V1A, I'm sorry. Now what we can do with this 68K grid resistor, we can actually put that right on the tube socket itself, and we can shield the cable right to the input jack. We can also shield this one, the grid for V2A, which this is the cold clipping stage. So if you shield both of those, and you don't have to necessarily do the hot shield thing, that'll keep it quiet. We can also improve the grounding here, because right now all the pots are just tied together in the back. You know, they've done it that way for years. Nothing really wrong with it, but there is a quieter way to run all your grounds. Over here we've just got our 4 old school green can caps. These are going to be a piece of cake to change out. We're going to be able to keep these resistors here. Every other resistor looks good, especially these big screen grid resistors. I don't see any problems there. Sockets look great. I mean, this is in really good condition. I mean, look at the and the heater wires. Normally I see them twisted. These are not twisted. These are laid parallel with each other, which works. It still keeps hum down. It'd be better if some of these wires were crossing over at a different angle. Don't really think it should be making that big of a difference. So I got one out, but the nuts and everything that you have to tighten up to get the filter caps out, they don't have them in a spot where you can easily get to them. So we're just going to have to take out the whole bracket and everything. Alright, so all the 5 caps on this side are done. There's one more underneath the board. If you were just doing a cap job for the filters, then you wouldn't necessarily need to lift the circuit board to get to that one, because you can just take it loose from underneath. But we do need to change these 2 bias feed caps as well. So let's take a 1/4 inch or a 3/16 socket and take these nuts off that hold on the circuit board. And while we have everything loose, we will also change the grounding scheme to be quiet, and we'll shield the 2 input wires on the first 2 gain stages here on this amp. Alright, so the recap's done. Everything is pretty much finished up. So like I said, while I got it open, I would like to, like this wire here, I mean, the excess is kind of unnecessary. So part of this grounding scheme means I'm going to have to drill a couple more holes, which they're all going to be hidden. You're never going to see them with the amp exposed. They're only in the top part of the chassis. Again, this isn't supposed to change anything in the circuit. This is just supposed to help lower the noise floor and stuff like that. Now, alternatively, you could do this by taking some of the lugs out of the, I guess the choke here. And I really don't see a problem with that. You know, some people would err on the side of caution and say not to do that because they'll come loose or some bullshit like that, whatever. I'm going to drill more holes, but if you really don't want to, then that is a totally fine option. Alright, so first I'm going to put one right by my input. Make sure there's nothing in my way. Alright, so I've got ground point 1 there. The next one I'm going to put these two guys right here. So I guess I might as well just put it right in front of them. I'm just looking for a good spot to put the next two because I've got two over here. I really need two more, and it really looks like directly under this presence pot is going to be like the best spot for it. So I found a good spot for the bias supply right here, right between the choke and the output transformers. Not really a whole lot of room, but I mean, you only got to do it once. So it is in there, it's tucked away, it's going to be hidden. I can still have the board somewhat flipped up with this attached. I'm going to start disconnecting. So I've got the cathodes for the second preamp tube disconnected from this bus wire here. Like I said, I really don't want to modify the circuit at all, except I'm not a huge fan of the low input. Nobody really is. So I'm going to redo that. Basically, I'm going to install the same type of voltage divider setup that is in like a super lead or something. So now in the process of trying to get the board back down. I've done pretty much everything I need to do. I should note that this is also still got 6550, so let's double check the bias resistors here and see what they should be. This does have 150K bias feed resistors. If we were going to change this over to EL34s, we want to change those out to 220K. I don't really see there's any reason to do that now. It sounds good with 6550s. I don't think you really get a huge difference in tone between the two. But I do need to correct this input jack setup like I want. So my first ground lug here, I have the ground from the input from the cathode of this first preamp tube tied into it, and that's it. On the next lug, I'm going to have the filter cap underneath. I'm going to have preamp volume here and the cathodes for the next preamp tube will be tied in there. Now we've got something really cool going on. Tubes are warmed up and cooked, biased up and everything. I didn't have to touch the bias. They're all falling within the right range. This one's about at 32. These two at 31 milliamps. This one on the end at 37. So not completely even, but not enough for me to really worry about it. I have not screwed the circuit board back down. I wanted to make sure everything worked. The ground scheme seemed to work out pretty good. I mean, it's not really noisy. I mean, there's white noise and stuff, but there's no hum or buzz whatsoever, which is awesome. So let's take a look at all the work that's been done here to make this thing super quiet. So for one, we've put a shielded input wire here, and I've tied that resistor with heat shrink and got it right on the grid of V1. Now this other black wire, this is coming from the preamp gain knob. That's been shielded as well. Now the one that's been shielded for the input stage is actually 2 wires, and I've actually rewired the high and low jacks to be more reminiscent of the, I guess, the earlier JMPs, which the main difference is instead of the low jack going directly into V1A, which is the cold clipper stage, it now has a voltage divider that dumps some of the excess guitar signal and it still goes into the same stage. We'll hear what difference that makes in a second. Taking the ground off of the input jack and off of here, it's no longer grounded to the back of the pot. It's going to this ground point here. Actually, this one is not. Just the input jack, the cathodes for the first preamp tube. That's it for that one, just those two. Now this grounding point has the cathodes for this preamp tube and also the ground for this pot right here, and also the cap that's underneath the board, the 50/50 filter can cap ground. Actually, I used some of the original wire to make this look good, but the master volume ground now actually comes over here to the mid pot, and they tie together before going to a ground connection right underneath this presence pot. In the presence pot, same deal. The components are no longer grounded to the back of the pot, they go directly to ground. These 2 pairs of filter caps here, this ground now also goes to underneath this presence pot. So the B plus ground actually comes through here, ties into this grounding point here with this set of caps. The ground for these 2 pairs of caps actually does run back all the way to here. The output jack grounds no longer go down here, but this actually runs underneath the board, ties into this point as well. This filter cap for the phase inverter way over here is no longer tied to this ground, and it comes over here underneath the presence pot. So last but not least, to keep the heaters quiet, we've taken the center tap off of the heater circuit, which was connected here. Be careful because there is a green wire that comes out underneath with these 2 heater wires. However, it is not connected to the heater circuit. That's actually the ground for the bias supply, I believe. Now I've used this 100 ohm resistor here between the 2 sides of the heaters to create an artificial center tap. And on top of that, I've elevated the heater circuit by about 64 volts. So that also helps to keep it quiet. Now we're going to take a look at the cabinet, starting with the wheels. I've actually never seen this type of caster before in a Marshall. They appear to be original because they're threaded, they're fitting into the same socket, and these wheels do say made in England on them, so that's pretty wild. And this one is not circular anymore. It doesn't seem to spin very well. I think it's just got a bunch of dust and dirt caught up in it. We can actually see if we can take this out. Fun fact about caster wheels. People say that, oh, they're crap and they break or whatever. They don't if you use them the way that they were intended to be used. Wheels on a cabinet are indoor only. If you only use them indoors, they will last forever. Not going down the sidewalk, not going down a gravelly parking lot to a gig, not outside. Like, that's going to ruin them. And of course they're not going to last long. You carry it. You carry it to the gig, you drop it inside the theater or the club floor, then roll it. That's what it's made for. And let's see what these speakers are all about. There it is. We have G12M70s. To get more information on a speaker, you've got a T number here. There's a really cool website that I'll put in the description that's got the specs for a lot of these T numbers, because sometimes speakers, the same type of speaker, could have multiple different T numbers, and maybe they change the code or the magnet or some of the doping or something, and some of that will be listed. Down here you'll find the date code. This one says LR28. I'll tell you what that means in a second. And that's actually pretty cool. LR28, LR28, same on all 4 speakers, which means they were all made on the exact same day. And if I shine a light in here, you can see up here 2712 is the type of cone used, and all the wiring looks original. They used an 18 gauge wire back then. They still do. So all the solder joints look good. Wires look good. So you want to make sure the solder joints are good and there's not too much stress on the wire. These are a little taut, but not too bad, because sometimes they can break. Another advantage to using slightly thicker wire is there's more meat on those solder joints to hold on. I'm not going to mess with the wiring or anything. It looks really good. This is all original. No reason to mess with it. I don't see any signatures on here. Sometimes you'll see the person that inspected the cab will sign the bottom piece of wood there. There's a chart that shows what the alphanumeric code is, and up until 1991 it was month, year, day. So this was made on November 28th, 1983. So if this was an 84, it would be, that R would be an S. T is an 85. One thing I was disappointed about when I got this cabinet was to see this 260 watt rating, which normally should mean that this cabinet would have G1265s in it. And the G1265, the original production only lasted a few years. I think it was like 78 or 79 when they started. It might have only been 3 or 4 years. I have to look it up. But they just used these badges until they were gone. They didn't stop when the speaker stopped, because technically this would be a 280 watt cab. So there's a little white noise in the mic, not too bad at all. It is sitting upside down and unshielded, and being plugged into the same circuit with my soldering irons also makes a little bit of noise, but I mean altogether, pretty quiet. Let's see what that modification to the low input circuit does. So this is plugged into the high. If you've ever plugged into the low input of any other JCM800 before, you know that that's a massive difference. This is totally reversible if necessary. And we didn't modify the preamp at all. This is literally only changing where the guitar signal comes into that first preamp tube. I do want to show you one secret. If you take guitar, plug it into the low input, and you take a dummy plug and plug it into the high, a little bit of a gain increase there if you do it that way. So I really like that option a lot more, because now it seems like I have 3 ways that I can plug into the front instead of just the normal 2, which are very stark in contrast with each other. So that's all the work we've done to the amp. The bias is holding steady. Tubes aren't perfectly matched, but they are pretty darn close, and close enough for me to sound great. So let's get this thing back in its head shell, and I want to hear it through the original cabinet that came with it. So let's see if those G12M70 speakers are as bad as everyone says they are. I've got my own opinions on these speakers, but I'll just leave that to you for this one. Let's hear the new reworked low gain input through these speakers as well. So that was a detailed look inside this 1984 Marshall JCM800 model 2203 with the matching JCM800 1960A cabinet with G12M70 speakers. I bought these together as a matching set and I'm pretty sure they came that way. The date code on the speakers is November from 1983 and the inspection tag on the head is from February of 1984. So that's close enough that they would have left the factory together. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe to the channel if you want. And I'll see you on the next one.